Hello everybody and welcome back to 89 Games and our continuing Gloomhaven character guide series. Today we are talking about the last of the standard Gloomhaven characters outside of the Jaws of the Lion DLC, and that is the Squidface or Cthulhu class. So for anyone wanting to avoid spoilers, click away now, but for everybody else, we're going to get started in 3, 2, 1, here we go. Alright everybody, today we're talking about the Plague Herald. The Plague Herald is honestly one of my more favorite classes. Not my favorite class, but I did enjoy playing him, and he's really built around control and debuffs, giving status effects to enemies more so than doing direct damage. His damage generally is a little lower, although you could build him maybe more as a ranged attacker, but I feel like you'd be losing a lot of the benefit of using the stuns and immobilizes and poison, especially poison, that he can do. So we'll see more of that as we get into the cards here. So let's go ahead and do that and jump into the level 1 cards. And let's talk Vile Pestilence. So right here we kind of see the idea behind the Plague Herald with this top ability right here. Attack 1, range 2 in the big area pattern, 7 hex pattern. It poisons all allies and enemies in the targeted area. So damage wise, this is really not that good at all, generally speaking, because especially in the beginning when you have a lot of -1s, you can end up not doing damage. The main point of this card would be to poison everything in that area, maybe get some bonus damage out of it. But we have a lot of other cards that are going to build off enemies being poisoned. So this is actually a really good card in the beginning of a map, especially if you can hit a group of enemies with it, 3-4 enemies, and get them poisoned. First off, you're really going to help your teammates because they're going to be doing extra damage every time they hit them. And second off, you're going to be able to set yourself up to use that poison later on. And then the bottom of this one is a nice little move 3, which is good because our mobility is going to be a problem the way we're going to build this character here. I'm going to build him leaning heavily into the poison aspect, so our mobility is going to be an issue. So having this move 3 here is nice. And then moving on to Grasping Vermin, this one is basically the same thing except it immobilizes but does attack 0. So it's got that same pattern, but it's attack 0, so again, the point of this one is the immobilize. It's not going to do damage, generally speaking. However, being able to immobilize maybe 3 or 4 melee enemies that are in that area are really going to help your team out because it's going to give them a whole turn where they don't have to worry about those guys. Just stay away from them, take care of the other side of the map, and then come back and get these guys that were immobilized on the next turn. Now, if you're fighting ranged characters, obviously this isn't as good. But as long as you're fighting melee characters, this is a really good card to hold them in place because it has such great range and area of effect to it. And then the bottom of this one is a shield 1 on yourself for the entire scenario. It's an active card. However, you do have to deduct 1 range from all of your ranged attacks. So there is a reason why you might want to be in melee. You might want to be a little closer and you might need this shield. But generally speaking, we want to play the Plague Herald as a ranged character. He's really built to be a ranged character. I'm not going to use this card a whole lot for the bottom. There might be some edge scenarios where it might make sense, but most of the time we're probably not going to do that. And then moving on to the next one, Wretched Swarm. This is another nice, big, same area of attack, except this time it's an attack 1, range 3, and stun, and you gain 2 XP. Now, this is a burn card. Maybe not one that you want to use very flippantly, obviously. You want to wait till it makes sense, but if you could stun 3 or 4 enemies with this, that could really give a boost to the rest of your team, being able to take those enemies out without them being able to fight back or focus on another bigger enemy on the other side of the room. Whatever the case is, this is a pretty good attack because of that range and being able to stun multiple enemies with 1 attack. And then the bottom is a move 4, which again is going to be nice for our mobility. And then moving on to the next one, Spread the Plague. Now this is an interesting card on top. It's an active card. Once during each of your attack actions, you may poison an ally, 1 ally within range 2, or deal 3 damage to that ally if they already have poison, to add +1 attack to the entire attack action. I don't like this one because you're going to be hurting your friend, you're going to be poisoning them to get +1 attack on an attack action. So yeah, if we're using something like Vile Pestilence, okay, now it's attack 2. That is better, but we had to poison someone else to do it. It just depends on your team and your party makeup whether this is going to make sense. Plus, the ally does have to be within range 2 of you. Now, I will say, if your ally has an item that makes them immune to poison, then this would be really good because you'd essentially get to do this for free as long as that ally was within range 2 of you. Because you would poison them, but their item would prevent the poison, so we can kind of game the system there and get that extra damage out of it. Assuming the digital version is going to let us do that, If we were playing on the board game, I would say that's fair game. I would say that's using your resources. So I haven't actually tested that in the digital version to say for sure that would work, but it should. However, then we move on to the bottom of the card. It's an attack 3, range 3, which is also good for a little attack on the bottom if we're doing something else with our top, or maybe just for a double attack, attack with top, attack with bottom. And then moving on to the next one is Biting Gnats. This is an attack 2, range 4, target 2, you gain 1 XP. This is a nice little, especially in the early levels, this is a nice little card to have just so you can spread out some damage. It's got range 4, so it's got great range. You can target 2 enemies with it. It's a nice little attack. I like it. I think it's useful, even with it only being an attack 2. And then the bottom is a move 4, which is really good for our mobility issues. And then moving on to the next one, this is an interesting card. Winged Congregation allows you to gain flying, activates wind, you get 2 XP, and it's an active card. So you make your character flying for the entire scenario. So this is really, really awesome for some of those scenarios that have a lot of obstacles or just enemies or something that you have to get past. Using this so you can fly and just go over all of them and not have to worry about having a jump card or using jump boots is really, really awesome. However, on most maps, it's really not going to be that good. It's not going to be necessary because you're going to be attacking from range. If there's not a lot of obstacles to move around, then there's not much point in playing this card. So it's a very situational card, but it is cool. It is cool to be able to have your character flying for a whole scenario. And then the bottom of this one is a move 2. You heal 1, affect all adjacent allies, which is nice for removing that poison. If you did decide to use Spread the Plague and you poisoned your friend, you can move over to them and then heal them to get rid of the poison. So there is a combo that could be done there, I suppose, to make your other attacks more powerful. I feel like it's a little hard to set up, though. And then moving on to the next one would be Creeping Curse. This is an attack 3, range 3, curse. The bottom is a move 2, curse, target 1 adjacent enemy. This is a really good, just general card to have and use for, attack 3, range 3 is a decent attack. And then add that curse in there, though, to give the enemies misses. That's really, really powerful once those curses kind of build up and you get a lot of them in the enemy deck. And then being able to move and curse is also very nice. And then Gathering Doom is our next one with an attack 3, range 3, and curse, which is exactly the same thing as Creeping Curse. So again, at the beginning, you can have 2 of these cards, get 2 curses off in 2 turns in a row. It's really nice. The bottom of Gathering Doom, however, is a loot 2 that activates wind. It's not that great unless you're looking for the money, obviously. So it kind of makes this an easy card to take out since we already have another card that does the same thing and has a better bottom. So then we'll move on to Paralyzing Bite. This one is a really nice one because it stuns. It's only an attack 1, range 3, but it stuns, gain 1 XP. So again, back to that control aspect of the Plague Herald I mentioned in opening. He is a very good control character with stuns and immobilizes to help mitigate damage to the rest of the team while they get to work on the enemies that aren't stunned or aren't immobilized. So generally speaking, the Plague Herald will do better in a bigger party because there will be more enemies, so it's easier to hit more enemies with our multi-target attacks like Vile Pestilence here. And then being able to stun enemies will be good because we have 3 other characters that can go and take out those enemies while they're stunned. And then the bottom of this one is a move 6 with jump, activates wind, which that's really good. Again, for mobility, we don't really necessarily need the jump because we could just fly. So I don't like any move that's a burn, generally speaking, unless we just really, really need to move 6 for some reason. And then the next one is Foul Wind. This one on the top, it allows you on your next 6 attack actions while air is infused to consume it to add +1 attack to the entire attack action. So this is actually a little bit better, maybe, than using something like Spread the Plague because you don't need anybody near you to make this work, but you do need wind. And we don't have a lot of reliable, reusable ways to activate wind as a Plague Herald. Later on, we'll have a few more, but in the beginning especially, this can be really hard to do unless someone else is activating the wind for you. So it can be pretty hard to use. And then the bottom is a loot 1. And then moving on to Scattered Terror here, the last card of level 1. It is an attack 2, range 3, target 3, pierce 2, activates wind, you gain 2 XP. Now, this is a burn, but this is a good card to bring along anytime you're going to be facing shielded enemies, because being able to attack straight through their shields, pierce 2 should get through most shielded enemies, not all, but if they only have 1 or 2 shield, then you can get the 2 attack off on them. This is a really good card for getting past the shields on 3 different enemies. And then the bottom is decent too for making all attacks targeting you to have disadvantage. Plus the initiative. The initiative is one of the lowest ones that we're going to get as a Plague Herald, so it's kind of a good idea to hang on this card, maybe just for that, so that we can go early when we need to. So then we'll move into the X cards, where we have Epidemic. It's an attack 3, range 2, target 2, gain 1 XP, which that's another decent little attack. Now this one's only range 2, so it's a little harder to use than Biting Gnats was, because Biting Gnats was range 4 and Scattered Terror is only, or rather Epidemic is only a range 2, but the damage is more on Epidemic by 1. So it's a decent little attack. And then the bottom, after each of your move actions, you can poison all adjacent allies and enemies. That one's a really good one for spreading poison around a little bit more. Although you would have to end adjacent to enemies to make it happen. And if you ended adjacent to your allies, you would end up poisoning them. Then the next one is Virulent Strain. Remove poison from any one enemy to cause it to suffer 3 damage. And then the bottom, poison, target all enemies adjacent to enemies with poison. So this card is one that I really, really like. So the top, you remove poison to make them suffer 3 damage. So this is great for shielded enemies for 1, because it's suffer. So you poison them and then you make them suffer 3 damage with this card. A lot of shielded enemies, the ones that have high shield and low health, this may actually finish them off. But the other use of this would be for those enemies that they had higher health and you got them down to 3 health left. Just use this to finish them off. Don't waste someone else's attack. You know, maybe you're not near them, but you can still use this because you don't have to be near them to use it. And you can finish off an enemy that has 3 health as long as they're poisoned. So I really like this card. It's also a very convenient, reusable way to just do guaranteed 3 damage. And then the bottom is really good for just spreading more poison around if you need more enemies to be poisoned, because you could have poisoned one enemy and then maybe he's got 2 of his pals around him. Now you just target them and they're poisoned. So I really like this card for the poison build and spraying that poison around. And then finally, the last one is Blistering Vortex. It's an attack 3, range 3, activates wind, 2 XP in that triangle pattern. And then the bottom is a move 2, shield 1 on yourself. So this card I don't really use. It's a burn. It's kind of a weak burn. Yeah, you could hit 3 enemies with it, but it's going to be hard to do reliably. I'd rather use the poison and get more damage on average out of my whole team than maybe just using this one time. So that does it for level 1 in X. So all we're going to do here at level 1 is take Gathering Doom out. Like we talked about, these are both the same card essentially, but this one has a weaker bottom. So we're going to take Gathering Doom out so that we can put Virulent Strain in and be able to make those poison enemies suffer damage or spread that poison around even more. Okay, and then we'll go on, move on to level 2, where we're going to find Under the Skin and Rot Maggots. So Under the Skin is an attack 3, range 3, pierce 2. So this is a really good, anti-shield card with that attack 3, pierce 2. It's just a good all-around basic pierce card. And then the other half of the card is a move 4. That's good for mobility. However, our other card here is Rot Maggots, which this one is an attack 4, range 2, poison. Poisons all allies adjacent to the target. So you wouldn't want to do this necessarily if your tank's up there next to the enemy. But this is a really good, attack 4 with only range 2, but it poisons. And we want to spread poison around, take advantage of things like Virulent Strain. So, and this one also gives you 1 XP. And then the bottom is a heal 2, range 3, and target 2, which is actually nice to have that healing option as well. So we're actually going to go with Rot Maggots here, because if you think about it, yes, this one would pierce 2. However, if we're adding poison to an enemy, we might as well be using pierce 1, because we're already negating one of their shields with the poison, and that's negating it for everyone that attacks them, not just us. So in the long haul, I think we'll get more out of Rot Maggots than we will the other one. So then we're going to move on to level 3, where we're going to find Succumb to the Gift and Fetid Flurry. And then Succumb to the Gift is kill 1 normal enemy with poison within range 3, gain 2 XP, burn. So yes, it is a burn, but you can kill a normal enemy with it. And, we're only at level 3, so this is pretty powerful. You get one of those earth demons or something that has a ton of health, get it poisoned, kill it with this, and it's done. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And then the bottom is Bless, affect all allies with poison. So that could be good. If you are using those cards where you're poisoning your friends, you could also give them Blesses, so kind of make up for poisoning them, maybe. And then the other one is Fetid Flurry. It's an attack 4, range 3, curse. The bottom's a move 2, activates wind. So this isn't a bad card either. Attack 4 with range 3 is nothing to shake a stick at. That's pretty good. It does curse, which is good. And there actually is a curse build in here too that you could go with if you want to just throw around a bunch of curses rather than using the poison. However, we're going to go with Succumb to the Gift because it focuses on that poison. It uses it to kill an enemy. And then to put that one in, we're going to take Spread the Plague out because like I talked about, probably not going to use this because my friends probably don't want to be poisoned all the time or taking that 3 extra damage. So unless we play specifically where we can give them an item to negate the poison, I think it's better to take that one out. We'll put Succumb to the Gift in, and then we'll move on to level 4. And at level 4, we're going to find Storm of Wings and Nightmarish Affliction. So Storm of Wings is an attack 4, range 4, consume wind, and you additionally target all enemies on the path to the primary target. So this one kind of reminds me of the Spellweaver card, the Eruption card. I can't remember the exact title of it, but it does essentially the same thing except you didn't have to consume an element. But this one does burn. You have to have wind to actually make it hit everything on its way to the target. If you have the wind, this can be a powerful card. You can do a lot of damage with it. The bottom's a move 5, which is really nice. However, the other one has poison, so it's the one we're going to end up going with for this build. It's only attack 1, range 3, but it targets 2, and it poisons and curses. It activates Dark Force, which we'll need later. So I really like this one for spreading those status effects around. It adds in a curse there. Don't underestimate the power of those poisons. You're not going to be doing most of the damage in your party, but you are going to be giving your party a ton of extra damage by poisoning all those enemies. And then the bottom, Immobilize, range 3, target 2. So another good control card for those melee enemies that you can do from range so they can't come up and hit you. So I like Nightmarish Affliction here. We're going to take that one. We're going to take out Wretched Swarm to put that one in. So we're going to lose this stun, but it was a burn, and we've got some other burns that we might be using now, like Succumb to the Gift. So we're going to take that one out. We'll put Nightmarish Affliction in, because if you think about it, the stun is technically better, but this Immobilize on the bottom is reusable. It can target 2 enemies. So it's not quite an equal trade, but that top is going to be really, really powerful. So then we're going to go ahead and move on to level 5, where we're going to find Accelerated End and Willing Sacrifice. So Accelerated End, all enemies with poison suffer 1 damage, and then you consume Dark to make it 2 damage instead. And the bottom is Poison, range 5, target 3. This one's really good for spreading poison around. And then the other one, though, is Willing Sacrifice, which also deals with poison. So once during each of your move actions, you may suffer 1 damage to deal 3 damage to any one enemy with poison. This is an active card, and the enemy suffers that 3 damage, so there's no modifiers or anything. This is really, really good. Once you have a bunch of enemies poisoned, this is really good because every turn you can deal 3 damage beyond whatever you did with your cards. So I really like this one, especially once you got a bunch of poisons out there. You're always doing 3 extra damage wherever you want. It's great for taking out shielded enemies. I really like the top of this one. The bottom is all allies with poison may recover up to 2 of their cards, discarded cards, or if you consume wind, it can be 3 of their cards instead. So another reason to poison your allies. You know, if they're poisoned, they might be able to recover cards from it. So Accelerated End, this is really good with making enemies suffer damage, all poisoned enemies. However, this is once every rest cycle, you could, if you have Dark activated, you could make all enemies with poison suffer 3 damage. Or every single turn, you can make 1 enemy suffer 3 damage. So in the long run, I think we're going to do more damage with Willing Sacrifice. It'll take longer, but we'll do more by the end of the scenario than we would using the top of Accelerated End. Unless, of course, you're using something like a Stamina Potion to get this back several turns in a row. So we're going to take Willing Sacrifice here for that active ability on the top. And then we're going to take out Winged Congregation, because like we talked about, this is very situational. Probably not going to be using it a whole lot. The only reason we've really left it in this long is because of that initiative. So we are going to lose that lower initiative there. But then we're going to go ahead and move on to level 6, where we're going to find Stinging Cloud and Black Tides. So Stinging Cloud is an attack 2, range 3, and if you consume Dark, it muddles everything in that nice big pattern. And then the bottom is a move 3 with shield 1. So I like this one for that muddle. Don't underestimate the power of muddle. I know it seems like sometimes that muddle's not that good, but when enemies attack with disadvantage, especially multiple enemies in a row, or if they have multiple attacks, the damage that you're not receiving because of them attacking at disadvantage really does add up, and you really do save yourself quite a bit of health in the long run. And then the bottom here is, good for the movement, good if we do need a shield if we're going to take a hit. And then the other card is Black Tides. It's an attack 4, range 3, create wind, or the bottom is a move 4, create dark. So this is a really good, just general use card that activates either the 2 elements that we need to do our extra things. So we are actually going to come back to pick this one up later, but for now we're going to take Stinging Cloud for that big area attack and muddle. So then Biting Gnats is going to come out because it's only an attack 2. Now it does have range 4, target 2. However, Stinging Cloud is range 3. It's going to do 2 damage as well, possibly add Muddle, and possibly hit more than 2 targets. So I think it's a decent upgrade to Biting Gnats. And then we're trading a move 4 for a move 3 shield, so I think it's a fair upgrade. And then we're going to move on to level 7, where we are going to find Airborne Toxin and Baneful Hex. So Airborne Toxin, Curse and Muddle, targets all adjacent enemies. If you consume Wind, it's all enemies within 2 instead. That could be really good. If there's a lot of enemies within range, get 3 or 4 curses out there, muddle them at the same time. That can be really powerful. And then the bottom is Poison, target all enemies. Creates wind, get 1 XP, and it burns. So that's a burn card, but it poisons everything on the map. There's no range to it. There's no, modifiers to that text. It's just poison, targets all enemies. So this can be really good for just a map you go in and it's full of enemies. Just go ahead and use this and have everything poisoned. And then start using your other cards to deal damage to those poisoned enemies. I really do like that bottom card, or the bottom of this card. And then the other one is Baneful Hex. If a curse causes an enemy to deal no damage during its attack, that enemy suffers 3 damage. This is an active card, so if you're playing the curse build and you're throwing a ton of curses out there, this could be really good, because if you throw a lot of curses out there, they are going to come up. They are going to happen, and then the enemies will suffer 3 damage from them. So this could be useful if you're playing the curse build. And then the bottom is a move 3, Curse, targets all adjacent enemies. However, we're playing Poison, so we're going to go with the Airborne Toxin. The top could be useful, but I really like that bottom for a situation where we can just poison like 6 enemies with it all at once. That's really powerful. So we're going to take that one, and we're going to take Vile Pestilence out to put that one in. So we're going to lose our poison area effect here that we had. However, if we got some other attacks now that can poison, like Nightmare's Affliction, where we can target 2. So I think it's safe to go ahead and replace this one, because this one, again, poisoning a whole room all at once is really useful, and I think is going to outdo what we could do with Vile Pestilence over the course of a scenario. Or at least it's going to be fairly equal. Of course, you could take something else out to have both of these in. That might be better. But we're going to go ahead and move on to level 8, where we're going to find Spreading Scourge and Grim Bargain. So this is the level where we're actually going to go back and take Black Tides, because Spreading Scourge, now this is a huge area, which is awesome, but it's only attack 1. It muddles, so that's decent. It's range 3, but overall, with only attack 1, it's not that great, unless, of course, you're buffing it. If you're buffing it with things, you have a major power potion to use. Maybe there's something else. You have, I think it's the Robes of Evocation, where you can consume an element to add another +1 to an attack. Maybe this is an attack 4 on what would essentially be an entire room. That could be really powerful, and, this attack is reusable, although you wouldn't be able to reuse your potion with it. So I just think that it's not as good as it may seem. The bottom is a heal 2, range 3, and target 3 though. So if you do need the heals, or you don't have a healer in your party, this might be good to take for that bottom, because you could heal your whole party with it. So then the next one, Grim Bargain here. During your next 6 attack actions, curse 1 ally within range 2 to gain add target effects. Rather, to gain 2 add target effects. So if you curse a friend, which sucks for them because now they have an extra miss in their deck, you can gain 2 add targets. So you could do one of your attack 4s at range, and now you could hit 2 other enemies with it. That's really powerful, but we are cursing an ally for it, and I think using the poisons and stuff, we're just going to be doing a lot more overall. And the bottom is Muddle yourself, but you double the value of your next attack this round. If you have Eagle Eye Goggles to give yourself advantage to cancel out the Muddle, then it would just be a straight attack with double the value. But again, we don't have a lot of high value attacks to Plague Herald, so I don't see this being as valuable as maybe it could be with a different character. So we're going to go back and take Black Tides, because it's going to allow us to be able to activate Wind or Dark when we need it. And then to put that one in, we'll take Grasping Vermin out, and we'll lose that Immobilize, but we have other ways to immobilize now, so that's not a big deal. Put Black Tides in, and then we're going to move on to level 9, where we're going to find Mass Extinction and Convert the Flock. So Mass Extinction, Curse and Wound, targets all enemies and allies, creates Wind and Dark. So cursing all enemies and wounding all enemies is really good, but to do it, you also have to do it to your friends. This is just kind of a trade-off, you'd only add 3 curses to your friends total, like each person would get 1 curse, and the enemy deck would have, who knows, 5 or 6 curses added to it. So I think in the long run, this might actually be worth it. The bottom, though, is all enemies with poison suffer 2 damage. And if you consume wind, it's 1 more. If you consume dark, it's 1 more, and you gain XP for each of those consumed. So you could potentially make all enemies with poison suffer 4 damage with this card, and it's reusable. So as much as we're going to be poisoning everything, between this card and using Virulent Strain to make enemies suffer poison, and also Willing Sacrifice, where we're going to make them suffer for poison, once everything's poisoned, we can use these cards to deal out a ton of damage over a small amount of time. I really, really like this one. Convert the Flock is more of your curse route with an attack 4, range 3, target 3, curse, but it's a burn. And then the bottom is all allies with poison suffer 2 damage. For each 2 allies damage, you add +1 attack to all your attacks this round, and you gain 1 XP. So the bottom of this one just sounds terrible. Honestly, for a level 9 card, all your allies with poison suffer 2 damage, and for each 2 allies, now generally speaking, unless you've got summons out there, you only have 3 allies. So the best you're ever going to get is 1 attack out of this, extra for your attacks around. That is really weak for what you're making your allies suffer. I don't like that one. And then the top, with being a burn, like it curses 3 enemies, yes, but it also burns to do it, so I'm going to go with Mass Extinction here. I think we can get a lot more use out of that one, and neither of those sides of that card burn. So we're going to take that one, and now we're going to take Creeping Curse out. So yeah, we're going to lose those curses because we're not really doing the curse build anyway, but we get to curse people with this one, so that replaces it. So there we go, there's level 9 with the Plague Herald. So again, a lot of poison. Poison is a big theme with him. Also cursing if you want to go that route, and then control. Because alternatively, we could keep like Grasping Vermin in, and we use Paralyzing Bite, we could use Wretched Swarm, and we could do a lot of control, not much damage, but we could do a lot of control if that's what our party needs. So I like Plague Herald as a control and debuffing character. That's how I like to play him. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about some items now that might work for the Plague Herald. So starting with the head items, the first thing is Eagle Eye Goggles, obviously for our big area attacks. This is really good. It's not ideal necessarily. If another character needs it, there's probably other characters that would get a better use out of it than you would as a Plague Herald, but if it's available, it's not a bad idea. The other one would be the Empowering Talisman. This is always good because you get your consumed items back, so you could get stamina potions back, or you could get your power potions back to buff that, attack 1 or attack 2 that's in a big area. That's a really good idea. And then the other one that might be good because we're mostly ranged would be the Hawk Helm, because it adds +1 range to your entire attack action, and that could be good to cancel out if you are using the one where you got -1 range but had the shield. So then moving on to armor. Armor is really not a whole lot to talk about here. Mostly you just want to avoid taking damage. So leather armor could be good in the very beginning, but the Cloak of Invisibility is also a really good idea, I think, because it can help you get into range without having to worry about taking damage. The Flea Bitten Shawl, if you have the DLC, is also good to try and put your initiative at 99 for the purpose of focusing, so enemies focus on you less. And then Robes of Evocation. This could actually be a good option because you could consume a random element that you don't need to add +1 attack, again, to one of those big area attacks. So those are some ideas for armor. And then for hand items, now we could go the Black Candle here because it adds Curse when we get it unlocked. It's later in the game. But, it adds Curse to a single range attack, so it's another way to curse if we're trying to go the curse route. Any of the shields are a good idea with Plague Herald just to mitigate damage, because we do only have, the low tier of health. We only start with 6 health at level 1. And then the last thing would be to create elements. We might have trouble creating Dark and Wind when we really need it, because we don't have a lot of cards that do that without burning. So taking a Staff of Elements, or maybe the Wand of Darkness or Storms, might be a good idea just so we can create those elements when we really need them. And then finally for feet, I would go with Boots of Striding probably, or even maybe the Comfortable Shoes and their various upgrades could be a good choice, because our mobility is going to be limited, so being able to move 3 every time instead of 2 for basic moves could really help us out. Or if we just want to go with one big move when we need it, go Boots of Striding and its various upgrades. And then for small items, again, Power Potion, good idea to bring a minor Power Potion, a major Power Potion to buff up our weak attacks. And then Stamina Potions are good for any character. That's always a good recommendation, be able to get cards back. And then the Moon Earring could be good if we're using the wands to create elements. This could be good to get those back without having to rest. And that about covers it for items. So let's go ahead and look at the perks now. So obviously the first thing is always take out negatives. Although I think we have immunity. So ignore negative scenario effects is the first thing we want to do. And that's going to add a +1 card for us as well as a nice little bonus. And then we'll start removing the negatives. So take that -2 out and put a 0 in instead. replace 2 -1s with a +1 here. And now this is the best it gets for the Plague Herald. We're going to keep these 3 -1s, which kind of sucks, but we can add a lot of +1s to kind of mitigate that. So we're going to look down here. We're actually going to go with the add 2 +1 cards, because that's going to give us a higher chance of pulling a positive than just putting in this 1 +2 card. And then after we get this, we'll go ahead and grab that +2 card, and we can do this twice. To remove zeros, add in +2s, and then we can go ahead and add 3 +1s that also give us wind, which will be helpful when we need wind. Hopefully that pops up for us at the right time. And then finally go with the rolling stun, and then the rolling poison cards, because we're doing the poison build. And actually, we can grab that stun twice. So we want to grab those 2 rolling stuns, and then the rolling poisons, and then we can go for either the immobilize or curses, depending on your preference. I think I'm going to do the immobilize here, and then we'll grab the rolling curses. So at max level for perks here, we're going to end up with quite a few positive ones. Not a lot of anything better. We do have 3 +2s, and we still have these -1s in here. So you're going to end up pulling a lot of +1s more than anything else. So on average, we should be doing a little higher damage than our card says, but not much. Again, our main thing as a Plague Herald is to spread poison around and use that to damage and help our allies damage enemies. There is the Plague Herald in all his poisonous glory. Again, I really like this character. I did like playing him as I used him as a control and to poison, and that really does help. If you got the right team around him and the team's able to take advantage of that poison, it can be really, really powerful to play him in a team. He might be harder to play if you're only playing with 2 characters. Now, the control aspect could still work really well, but it's going to be harder to take advantage of his big area attacks, because with only 2 characters, there's less enemies, so you're not going to get as much mileage out of those cards as you might otherwise. So if you liked this video, remember to like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. It really does help the channel out. And if you'd like to continue watching more on the guide series, you can check this video out right here. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and keep on gaming.